Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday once again. This is our fifth Tuesday in a row, and I am so happy you're here.
Everybody. Happy Tuesday.
I am getting some feedback here. Need to turn it up. Okay, got that. Anyway, I am so glad you're here, and this is our fifth in a language mini series mini trainings, a series of mini trainings, where I am just sharing things I've learned over the past 21 years, what's worked for me, and things that I see work with kids time after time. So I am glad you're here. Be sure in the comments to let me know where you're watching from. Let me know if you're a speech language pathologist, a special education teacher, paraprofessional, a parent. I would love to know. Hi, Luna. I'm glad you're here. And I love to know where everyone's watching from. I am in Wisconsin, and it is about 21 degrees tonight, which is kind of balmy and warm because this weekend it is going to be 20 below regular temperature. That doesn't even count the wind chill. So I hope that you are somewhere warmer than I am. And if you're out on the East Coast, in the Northeast, I hope that you are shoveling out safely from all the snow that you got. So, hi, Abby. Hi, Cynthia. And, South Florida, Marissa. And Aubrey from Illinois. We have Sherry from Toronto. Paraprofessional in Alberta. Awesome. Heather, parent New York. Rosita from Indonesia. I am so glad to have all you here. Someone from Portugal and Australia. Amy Mandel from New York. Thank you guys so much. I am so happy that you join me each week. And if this is your first time here, be sure to go back on my Facebook page and check out these other mini trainings that we've had in January. And if you stay till the end of that tonight, you'll get to see I have a special surprise I'm so excited about. I had kind of told you last week to mark your calendars for February 9th, but I'll tell you more about that at the end. So tonight we are talking about echolalia and kind of reframing it. I think it is given a bad rap for being something that, oh no, they're really echolalic. What do we do? And kind of makes us feel helpless, confused. And so I hope that tonight, it's not going to be a magic cure for echolalia, but we can talk about ways to help and ways that we can be patient and kind of move beyond echolalia and try to teach more flexible language in our young kiddos with autism. So let's get started. If you're new here, I'm Tara, and I'm a speech and language pathologist, and I create resources and activities and social stories for educators and parents of little ones with autism. And I just started doing Facebook Lives this month to kind of share some of this content, because sometimes just getting a resource isn't enough. Sometimes knowing how to use it is really, really helpful. So anyway, tonight talking about echolalia. Now, I want to start with a little story. So last week, I was working with a student online through Zoom, which, that's what we've all been doing for the last year, right? Back and forth between different models. So I'm working with this little one, and we're trying to label some new pictures and get some new vocabulary going for her. But she's extremely echolalic. And so her dad's trying to help prompt her. And so it would kind of go like this. I'd have a picture on the screen of a hat. So we're doing winter clothing. I would say, "What is it?" And what do you guys think she'd say? She says, "What is it?" Exactly the same way I say it. And then her dad would say, "What is it?" And she'd say, "What is it?" And he'd say, "It goes on your..." Just like we would as any parent or therapist trying to give that prompt. But with echolalia, that doesn't work because it starts that processing over again and starts that repetition over again. So he says, "It goes on your," and she says, "It goes on your," and you get in this vicious cycle of like, okay, I'm trying to prompt in a different way, and she repeats me, and that is the trouble with echolalia and why people just get so frustrated because, like, how do we get out of that cycle? And so later on, I'll share some techniques, but I want to tell you a little thing about that little girl. I'm going to get a little picture here and show you. So I was doing a co-session with a special education teacher, and as the dad and the teacher were talking, I quietly put up a picture. And all of a sudden, that little girl said, "Penguin." And it was like, oh my gosh, she knows what this is. Like, that's what we're trying to get at with that, what is it, and trying to get that vocabulary out. And it got me thinking, like, this week in our session, I really need to talk to Dad about ways that we can stop that cycle of giving cues and having her repeat them, because it's not getting her anywhere. But it is so unnatural to feel like I'm just going to hold a picture up and say nothing. But I think that's what this little one needs right now. So we'll go more into that as we get going. But like I said, echolalia and autism can be confusing. And it can be confusing for both educators and speech therapists and parents who are trying to teach their child to talk. And what I can say is, like, I'm always really happy when kids are verbal. Even if you have echolalia, like, they can form the words. That is a huge thing to be happy about, excited about. Now we just have to kind of mold it and figure out how to teach them to use it more flexibly and spontaneously, right? So echolalia, for people that are kind of new to that term, is simply repeating and echoing of words that someone else has said. So it could be a single word, it could be a phrase, or entire sentences. So the little girl I was telling you about, I would say, "What is it?" And she'd say, "What is it?" You have other students that maybe repeat the end. So I might say, "It goes on your head," and they might say, "Head," and repeat the last thing you say. So repeating words like this is a normal part of language development. It happens in young kids as they're learning how to imitate the adults and other people in their environment to learn how to speak. But in typical development, kids will pass this phase. They'll learn enough words and start combining them together, understanding them, and eventually speak in phrases and sentences. The difference with autism is a lot of kids will get kind of stuck, and they can't move beyond that imitating of the words that they hear or the phrases that they hear. And so many times, kids will repeat long sentences without understanding what the words mean in the sentence. So a lot of times, too, these sentences are more difficult grammatically than they can come up with just on their own. So an example of this would be a student that says, "It's time to go to bed," and they maybe said it popped out like when they were doing their evening routine of getting ready for bed, and they say, "It's time to go to bed." Now, they don't know maybe what "it" means, time, to, go. They might not know what all of those mean. And if you showed that child a picture of a bed and said, "What is it?" they might not even be able to label bed. But they know that that chunk of words goes with that routine, if that makes sense. And we'll talk in a little bit about kind of how you can look at the function of echolalia. And because sometimes it's not just, they're just meaninglessly echoing what you say. Sometimes there's meaning to it, and they use this chunk of words that they know and that they know go with the routine to communicate. So we'll take a look at that too. So there's different types of echolalia, and I'm going to put this up for you. So we have immediate echolalia, and that one's pretty easy to figure out. You say it, a word or a sentence, they immediately echo it back to you. So that's what's happening when that student I told you about, when I'm saying, "What is it?" and she says, "What is it?" And it happens throughout the whole session with anything the parent and I are talking about or trying to prompt her with. So that's the immediate echolalia. And like I said, they can imitate or echo an entire sentence, or it could be a word or the end of a word. Another example is you might be trying to give your child or student a choice. So you might say, "Oh, what do you want for lunch today? Do you want pizza or a hot dog? And they're going to say hot dog. Now, those of us that are familiar with echolalia, we might go, okay, let's check for understanding, and we switch it. Do you want hot dog or pizza? And then they say pizza. Yeah, okay, which one is it? Hot dog or pizza? And it ends up they say what you say last. So how do we know what they really want? And in a little bit, I'll talk about having a backup communication system where you can really check for that understanding, because that's really, really hard. And that's where a lot of frustration can stem from for these little ones too. Delayed echolalia is when it isn't echoed immediately, but something they say throughout their day sounds just like something someone else has said to them. So they might see their coat and say, "Do you want to go outside?" And they're not asking you if you want to go outside. They're talking about themselves, either linked with seeing the coat, or maybe they're using it to make that request, and the pronouns are mixed up, which is another thing that is frustrating for parents, is trying to get those pronouns correct. So anyway, that's delayed. You hear it later. And then scripting is kind of a form of delayed echolalia, and that's when kids are reciting long lines for movies or shows, or they have an entire book memorized, and it is typical for young children to memorize their favorite books. But this maybe goes beyond that to like really, really long books being memorized. And the kind of cool thing about scripting is I have seen kids use a line from a movie or a cartoon correctly in a situation. And I think, man, that is amazing that they can apply that in a situation. And so that's where I think echolalia is often looked at in a negative light. But I think we need to reframe that, because some of these things going on with echolalia are really kind of amazing. And especially when they're taking these chunks of phrases and sentences that they have listened and picked up and then apply them for a request or something, like that's a really good skill. And so we'll delve more into that too in just a few minutes. But again, happy the child's speaking verbally, super awesome. And we can try to use echolalia as a bridge to more flexible language. And we just need to focus on directly teaching receptive language skills so that they increase their understanding of what they're saying. So like I said, they might say, "It's time to go to bed," but they might not be able to identify or label the picture of a bed. And that's where the problem comes in, because in order to make longer sentences on your own, you need to understand the words you're saying and the vocabulary that you're using. So first, before we go into some of those strategies, I want to look at that function of echolalia. And this is something I think to really keep in the back of your head when you're talking about a student or a child that has echolalia. What is the function? What's their communicative intent? What are they getting out of it? And are they using this echolalia to get some things that they want or communicate something? So Barry Prezant has been a leading researcher in autism, and especially looking at echolalia. And many years ago, he found different functions of echolalia. And one of them is non-focused. And I think when we think echolalia, that's what we think. There's not really an identified reason for it. They're just mimicking what you say, right? But he found that most of it was not non-focused. Much of it had a function. And this is what he found. Some of it is self-regulatory. So you have a child that is upset and they start saying, "It's okay, baby. It's okay, baby." And that's what their mom says to them when they're upset, to try to co-regulate. So they're trying to self-regulate by saying this familiar phrase that they know that their mom says to them. And I think that's pretty genius, right? They are applying it and using this echolalia to self-regulate. Someone just said, what is Barry's last name? Prezant, P-R-I-Z-A-N-T. And I forgot to tell you too, I will come back after I'm done and I will go and answer any questions you guys have in the comments. So watch for that afterwards. Okay, so self-regulation, that's one of the functions. Another function is like a yes-no, so to affirm something. So you might say to your child or student, do you want juice? And they say, do you want juice? And sometimes that's maybe non-focused, like they're just simply echoing you. However, once you know the child well, you will be able to distinguish if that is non-focused or if it's an affirmation. You'll know them well enough, and this is where parents come in. Talk to the parents because they know their child so well. They know if they repeat me after I ask if they want juice, it means, yeah, I want some juice. So really looking at that function and what they're trying to communicate with it, and talk to the parent because they know their child best. All right, the other function I want to talk about is requesting. And so echolalia can be used as a function to request something. An example would be a student that says, do you want to go outside? Kind of what I talked about that earlier. Do you want to go outside? And they're not asking you if you want to go outside. They are maybe requesting that they would like to go outside. But the grammar and the sentence structure gets mixed up because of echolalia. And so they are reversing the pronouns. And so people get confused. And then the more you try to prompt and say, you can say, I want to go outside. And they'll say, you can say, I want to go outside. And it gets that vicious cycle again, right? So if you know the student well, you'll be able to kind of distinguish, like, okay, I think they're using this to request. So these are important things when you were reframing echolalia. It is not just all random meaningless. There are things that you can look into to kind of figure out why they're using it, when they're using it in a way to communicate. And all of these functions look at communicative intent. So like I said, it's not all random and meaningless, and you can kind of tease out some of those functions. And again, parents are the key to helping figure that out. And then one of the biggest frustrations I hear from parents and even from educators is that pronoun reversal, because it can be so hard to figure out how to get those pronouns back switched correct. And so if you have a student, you can see how echolalia really impacts their pronoun development. So we're saying, do you want to go outside? And they don't automatically switch gears in their head and know to change it to, I want to go outside. And so that's where the pronouns really get impacted. If the child is learning their pronouns by repeating others, you're going to have that reversal. And it's because they're learning the chunk of words together, right? And like I said, the more you try to prompt, the more things get mixed up and it's really hard to explain. And I feel like for me, one of the best ways to start to address this is to really be mindful about the words you're using and the words you are prompting or giving directions with. And this is going to feel really unnatural at first and counterintuitive, but you need to switch your pronouns so you're modeling what you want them to say. All right. So if you notice they're thirsty or they bring you the cup, instead of saying, do you want juice? Hold up the cup and say, I want juice. And like I said, it seems unnatural, but the more you get used to doing that, the more they're going to start echoing back the correct grammar when it comes to pronouns. If it's already ingrained the other way, this will take a while. It'll take a while of you switching and being mindful of how you're prompting. Now remember, when you are doing this, you're basically just showing them kind of a new way to echo. By doing that, you're not directly teaching pronouns and what pronouns mean, but it's a step to try to switch some of those reverse pronouns, right? So down the line, we're going to teach pronouns directly, but when you look at the developmental sequence of language development, pronouns are a little more difficult because they're kind of abstract. Sometimes I'm you, and sometimes I'm I or me. And so it can be really confusing, especially to someone who is a concrete thinker. So know that first, just start modeling it the way you want them to hear it. And then we're going to move on to some vocabulary development and eventually get to teaching pronouns directly. But we want to make sure we have some understanding of things first, like one-step directions, following directions, imitating motor actions, making sure we have receptive understanding of a variety of vocabulary, a variety of verbs, and even some things like prepositions. So we get a good base of language kids are understanding. We need to check for that understanding, especially if a child is echolalic, because even though they can say a lot of these words, do they know what it means? And until you know what words mean, it's hard to build that flexible language and spontaneous, flexible sentences. So now we've talked about how what echolalia is, different types of echolalia, and the functions of it. Now, like I said, we're not going to focus on stopping echolalia. We're going to focus on teaching them how to increase their understanding of language. And I just want to make sure I'm telling you every single thing that I need to here. I don't want to miss anything because I have a couple of freebies. So next up, one of the things I like to do is use a language sample that looks specifically at echolalia. And I know you're not going to be able to see this because it's not big enough. But those of you that are speech language pathologists, you're familiar with what a language sample is. So here on this sheet, I have it for you. I'll link it in the comments also. But you could do this at home too. So there's 50 spots here, and you just take a sample of 50 of the utterances or sentences or words your child says. And so you just write them down. And I put a little key at the bottom here. I will write E next to any of the phrases or words that are immediately echoed or delayed echolalia that I know of. Sometimes we don't know if it's delayed echolalia or not. But so I've had students where I do this and it will say 48% echolalia. And that gives me a place to start, right? So if I know in this sample, 48% of their utterances or things they said were at echo, all right. So if we start implementing some strategies for building their language, 2 months down the line, 4 months down the line, if I repeat that language sample, is it going to be a little less? Is it going to be 40% echolalia? And that's one of the things you can do to really know you're making progress, even though it can be slow, because echolalia is hard to change. But I will have that for you, and you can always message me or put in the comments if you have questions specifically about doing that, right? So I recommend doing that language sample. The free template will be put up for you. It's also in, if you scroll down to the end of my blog post today about echolalia, you'll have all this information plus the free template. So if you have been on this journey with me with these mini trainings this month, you will know that the first thing I taught at the beginning of January was how to teach imitation and how to follow one-step directions. You can go back and watch that Facebook Live if you missed it. Each of the Facebook Lives I did this month, I have free resources every time. So go back and watch that, because I think you need to start to make sure these kids are understanding. And so starting with following directions, really important. And then that receptive vocabulary, going back and just making sure they know what a bed is. They know what is the bus. They can point to it or give it to you, not just say it. Because I think a lot of times we think, well, they can say bus, so they know what it is. Like, how could you? I think one of the things with autism that can be confusing, even for speech language pathologists, is when we do testing and a child's Expressive language is higher than the receptive. Okay, how can they say more and talk at a higher level than they can understand? Like, it just doesn't make sense. But I think echolalia plays into that. And so just because they can say a word doesn't always mean they have understanding and can generalize it. So looking at that vocabulary, looking at verbs, making sure there's comprehension so you can start to use words more flexibly. And an example that I talked about earlier, like this really happened several times in my career at the elementary level. So we would in the morning have to turn in our list of how many of each lunch choice our class wanted. And so I'd say when I was new, do you want pizza or hot dog? They'd say hot dog. And I might check again. Do you want hot dog or pizza? Pizza. Okay, which one are we going to go with here? I've had students where, I went with the last one they said. Then we get down to the lunchroom, and guess what happens? We have a meltdown because they said hot dog because it's the last thing I said. And then the lunch worker puts a hot dog on their tray, and they see the pizza, and they're like, no, I wanted the pizza. They can't say that, but then you have a meltdown. And that is where echolalia can be really hard. So while you're teaching vocabulary and verbs and all of that, and you're teaching comprehension, we need to have a backup communication system of some type, whether it's PECs or a communication book or choice boards. So I quickly implemented, we took pictures of all of the different, now this is back when you didn't have access to as much clip art easily. So we took pictures of all the lunch choices, and then each day if there were 3 choices, we would pull that out of our folder, put the 3 choices on, and I found a lot of our students, when they saw the picture, they knew exactly what they wanted, right? There was no confusion about that. They wanted the pizza. It was not the hot dog. And so that getting that implemented gave them a voice while they are trying to work through the echolalia. So huge having choice boards like that and a backup communication system. And that, of course, talk with, as a team, with the speech language pathologist, the parents, and special education teacher to see what is going to work best for that student. Next week, I'll talk more about how to pick a communication system. I love, with my young students, I love PECs because PECs teaches initiation. PECs is not just point to this. A lot of my students have trouble with gestures. And so things like having to point to something is difficult at first. And so teaching a child how to initiate and give a picture, and I'll go more into that next week, but really important. So be thinking backup communication. The other thing I am attaching, or I'll put in the comments, are the sentence starters that I gave. I think it was back when I talked about vocabulary. So the sentence starters can be really helpful. These are free for you too. They can be helpful if you're just around the classroom and you want to expand using that structure, but kind of using the echolalia. So we might put it together. We might be playing, and I have like this little ball, and we're playing with a ball, and I might just pull out my sentence strips. You can put them on a ring even, and I might set this on there, and we say together, it's a ball. And so we're moving away from only requesting too. We're moving to commenting in different ways. It's a ball, or I see a ball, and giving that structure that can help with some of kind of sequencing that sentence, the syntax, we call it. So I have this for you too, and hopefully that will help you expand a little bit. I wanted to talk to you about next week. So instead of being on Facebook Live, I'm doing a free full-blown webinar training next week, same time, February 9th, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central. and it's titled How to Help Young Children with Autism Communicate. Let's Find Their Voice. And so we'll kind of take all of this, but then really look at how do we pick a communication system? How do we teach communication in general? How do we look at those functions of behavior more in depth? And so in the webinar training, we'll be able to take a little more time than I've had here on Facebook Live. And so it'll be probably at least 50 minutes of good content. It's free. You can invite anybody that you want. What you have to do is sign up ahead of time. So I will put that in the comments. But what you'll learn in the training is how to identify how your child is currently communicating with others. You'll learn ways to determine what type of communication system can help them effectively communicate with others. And then we'll look at what skills to start with to directly teach and increase communication skills. And then I'll also share with you some options if you want some more support on this. So that watch for that in the comments, and I will also post it separately on Facebook. I'm so excited. Here, let me show you the webinar. There, that's the webinar. And I forgot to tell you, it's not just Tuesday. I'm giving some other options because sometimes maybe Tuesdays don't work for somebody. So Tuesday the 9th, Thursday the 11th, and then the following week, February 16th. So there's 3 options for this webinar. And if you have not, I will link this in the comments too. If you haven't picked up the free ultimate guide for targeting language skills in children with autism, it's 22 pages, and I give a list of kind of the normal, typical development of some of these areas we talked about. And then there are some pages that have things like unique language characteristics in autism, echolalia, joint attention, gestures. And then as we move on, each of these Facebook Lives has correlated with a page from here. So we did motor imitation, following directions, vocabulary, and then moving on to tonight, we talked a little bit about pronouns. So I will put the link in for that because that is free also. And I think that's everything I have for you. I was just so excited to talk about the webinar at the end. I didn't want to forget it. So next week we'll have even longer with each other. You just need to go in and register. So don't forget that. It's not going to just pop up on your Facebook. I see a lot of comments coming in, so I will probably spend the next hour and a half answering comments and questions that you have. Reach out if you need anything, and I cannot wait to see you next week in the webinar. Have an awesome night, everybody.